they are all trying to stop you from having the freedom of choice.
Exactly.
And, a free market is so important. So important. And people, again, take it for granted. Oh my gosh, capitalism is so bad. No, it is not. It is not so bad. Communism is so bad. And I don't understand how this is such a hard concept for people to understand. If you think about whatever you want right now, I like blue birds, and then you go like, I want to find a little toy for my kid that resembles that. You will find it because somebody had a company, they made it. How do you think this would be if we were a communist state? Like, who would be interested in creating different things, right?
It's one of the most antithetical things about communism, I think, is that it lacks the competitiveness that exists in all human beings. I like to say that communists are naive about the human condition because humans, it's very evident that human beings have an innate need to compete. And, you can point at a lot of different things to prove that. Warfare is a way to prove that. We have the need not even to just compete for resources, but we compete for mates. We compete for fun. So there's this inherent need that human beings have to compete. And part of capitalism is businesses competing for your money, and by proving that they are the best options. If you can't provide a good product that nobody wants to buy, you die off, and naturally you're left with, or should be left with, the companies that are the best. What was it like growing up in Brazil?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Brazil, and I think it's very important that I talk about it because a lot of times people think that I came here as a child with my parents, which is very normal for a lot of people. But no, I am a first generation immigrant. I came here by myself. I actually moved to the States when I was 24. First time I came here, it was in 2011. I came here as an au pair. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I have, yeah. You were taking care of kids.
Yes, that's right. So, but I'll get into that. Let me just tell you a little bit about Brazil. So, growing up in Brazil, we were very poor. I remember, I always tell this to my students because I see them like sharing snacks and being so ungrateful about things. And I said, did you know that the first time I actually had a can of soda, I was like probably 12 or 13. Like these things are, they're like luxury items for us. So, and I wasn't even like in a super poor family, like there are families that are doing much worse. But things are hard. Things are hard. You work hard and you just don't, you don't see your efforts and they're not worth it because the government takes everything away from you. And everybody is just struggling. And I feel like it's gotten so much worse, since I moved here. Now we have to send money to, my father's still in Brazil. Everybody's still in Brazil, but my mom, we moved my mom here 4 years ago. So she's now with us, but all of my family is still in Brazil. And my grandma used to do great, because she's retired and my grandpa passed away. So she received like his retirement and hers, and she was like doing okay. But now if we don't send money over there, like she's just going to struggle so much. And it's sad because, so life was most definitely very hard. And I remember the first time I came here, I was like, there's no way that I can just go to a store and buy clothes. Like, if it's nothing, like for us, buying a pair of shoes was like a big event. And it's just, I am very thankful for, I know life is not only about material things, but they sure make a difference. Just having access to things, like a phone, the phone that we all have now, like an iPhone, whatever. It's something that only rich people can afford. So, and that stops people from progressing because that is a tool that you could use for work. You could, like you can't. And then if you have one, you have to hide it. Like every time I go to Brazil, I can't leave with my phone. No, they'll take it away from you. Like the first moment they see it, they're going to just snatch it from you.
Like stolen.
And
Got you.
it's just awful. Yeah, there's a
Right.
lot of robberies that go down there. I mean, I still love Brazil. That's
You're home.
home for me. It breaks my heart to see everything that's going on there lately, and to know that it's a country with so much potential. Our economy is great. Like, we're the biggest country in South America. There's no reason for us to be the way we are right now.
Right.
The inequality is just out of this world.
Well,
But
let's
I always knew
contextualize that. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that the potential that I see in Brazil is what actually breaks my heart. Because if it was like, a small country, a country that I don't have any hopes for, I would be like, yeah, whatever, okay. But I do see that it has so much potential, and it's bad.
Well, I can relate to that, because the United States has seemingly limitless potential as well. And people don't appreciate that. I saw a comment online the other day, and I'm not sure what country the person was from, but I assume just from the context that they weren't American. And
Hmm.
the comment was to the effect of, I don't understand why Americans hate their country so much. Everybody online who's American seems so apathetic. All
Yeah.
these, just this opinion. And it's so true. It's become, I think, almost a cultural norm over the past maybe 15 or so years to hate the United States as an American. I get why other countries have, their feelings about us, and it's okay to criticize any country and any government for the things that they do wrong, but it is weird. I spent and have lived a lot of time overseas by virtue of being a military brat and then in the US military myself, and I've never met anybody in any other country in Africa or Asia or Europe who actively hated their own country and talked about it the way I see Americans talk about it. So when you talk about the potential of Brazil, I agree, because I look at the United States and I see people wasting the potential that we have, and
Hmm.
this almost collective belief in, well, the United States is declining, and the United States is so racist, or the United States is so ableist, or all these different things they say. And it's like, well, you have all of these options and you have all this opportunity to go out and make your life better and make changes, but I think people equate complaining online to actually doing something. It's so easy to be an activist on Instagram or TikTok, all of these things. I actually wore one of the shirts we sell on this episode on purpose, and I've never worn it before, but it just says citizenship isn't passive. And I say that because as Americans and any citizen of any country, it is an obligation you have, in my belief, to participate in your government, and whether that means actually running to try to make policy change, or participating in the sort of bottom to the top way that the United States is designed.
Hmm.
One of the best ways for Americans to sort of box out a lot of this stupidity that our government brings down upon us, is to get active locally. If you can do things for yourself, in essence, you don't need the government to do it for you. And the government is not going to find or the best way to do it. They're going to find the quickest and cheapest way to do it, and that is not always the best way to do it. So one of the greatest inoculations to government tyranny is by doing things yourself. And so that's the potential I see that people squander here in the United States.
And
You know,
that's what people take for granted here, the freedom that they actually have. Because, for example, like when I talk about Brazil, and like if I worked the same hours, I put the same amount of effort, I wouldn't be able to go ahead in life and just, have a house and build a family, because the government has become so corrupt. They have
yeah,
created so many ways to stop you from progressing, that now you don't have that freedom anymore. And
yeah,
this is what I started seeing here in America. Like, they are finding ways to get you stuck with, like, for example, universal health care. Like, that is ridiculous. I come from a country with universal health care, and I'm not
right,
saying that America's healthcare is the best. Like, I think it's ridiculous, and I think there's a big mafia behind it. But the
100%.
solution is not universal healthcare.
I agree.
Because, like, for example, in Brazil, my dad has been waiting for over a year to do a simple exam. And you're like, oh, yeah, but it's for free. Okay, but what if I want to pay, for him to go to a clinic?
Yeah.
And again, in Brazil, it's still kind of like okay because we still have private companies, like
Mm,
private medical companies that you can go to. But
got it.
in places like Canada, you just don't have that choice,
Right.
right?
No, great point.
So, yeah, and the things that they're trying to do here are exactly that. So, like, even right now, we're stuck with the energy, the company that provides energy for our house. There's only one for the whole city,
Yeah.
and then they do whatever the heck they want, and you don't have that choice to go like, no, I'm either going to create something to compete against that, or I'm going to go to a different company. They don't allow you to do that. So
Yeah.
if you look at the policies that Democrats are creating and the politics that they support, they are all trying to stop you from having the freedom of choice.
Exactly.
And, a free market is so important, so important. And people, again, take it for granted. Oh my gosh, capitalism is so bad. No, it is not. It is
Yeah.
not so bad. Communism is so bad. And I don't understand how this is such a hard concept for people to understand. If you think about whatever you want right now, I like, bluebirds with uh, I don't know. And then you go like, I want to find a little toy for my kid that resembles that. You will find it because somebody had a
Yeah.
company, they made it. How do you think this would be if we were a communist state?
Yeah.
Like, who would be interested in creating different things,
That's
right?
one of
It's
that's one of the most antithetical things about communism, I think, is that it lacks the competitiveness that exists in all human beings. I like to say that communists are naive about the human condition
my
because
gosh.
humans, it's very evident that human beings have an innate need to compete. And you can point at a lot of different things to prove that. Warfare is a way to prove that. We have the need not even to just compete for resources, but we compete for mates. We compete for fun, right? We've created sports to compete. So there's this inherent need that human beings have to compete. And part of capitalism is businesses competing for your money, and
Right.
by proving that they are the best option, whether it's
Hmm.
healthcare or it's shoes or it's boxed wine, it doesn't matter, right? That's the natural the natural way that free market is supposed to exist. If you can't provide a good product that nobody wants to buy, you die off, and naturally you're left with, or should be left with, the companies that are the best. And then,
Yeah.
but to your point, right, that the crony capitalism aspect comes in, where let's just talk about like the bank bailouts that happened under Barack Obama, right? That's not true capitalism. What that is the government picking winners and losers and subsidizing them to keep them alive. That whole lie, essentially about too big to fail, that's not real capitalism
Yeah.
at all. If it was truly capitalism and Nike wants to say, oh, with like these tariffs, our shoes are going to cost so much money now in the United States. Well, too freaking bad. If you can't figure out how to make shoes in the United States or somewhere that, it's sourced here and you're not affected by tariffs or whatever, to use that as an example, then you don't deserve to continue to make shoes. It's just how that works, right? But I want to go to the other point you were talking about with the healthcare and the universal healthcare. I think both the left and the right would agree that the government is corrupt and needs fixing. Okay, I think
Hmm.
the left is pissed that they're just kind of the ones that aren't doing it right now, and I'm talking about like Doge. But but it's funny because the left seems to think that more government is the solution, when if you got them talking about it, they would say that the government needs to be fixed. But if you had a separate conversation, they'd say, oh, well, universal health care subsidized by the federal government is going to be better. It's going to be okay. We're going to be able to do
I
this. And
don't
it's just
think
like,
they realize,
mm-hmm,
and I want to ask your opinion because the biggest discussion here in my house between me and my husband is my husband doesn't believe that Democrats are naive. He thinks that they know exactly what they're doing. They're not stupid. And
Interesting.
I still believe that there's so many of them who do not know what they're supporting. Like they actually believe
Oh,
the
I completely
lies.
agree.
Right. My husband's like, nope, they know it. They know it and they just hate America and that's it. I think some are like that, but there's so many. Like for example, a teacher I work with. My gosh, like he's such a smart man and he's
Hmm.
a diehard Democrat. I'm like, this
Right.
doesn't make any sense. You talk to him and it's you would say he's a Republican, but when and I think that we get into like the Trump hating system that was
Hmm.
created in this country. And I
Yeah.
was almost a victim to that because they demonized that man so much
Right.
in a way that I don't know. I don't know how they did that, but oh, it worked.
The
There's
media.
so many people out there that are smart, but they just cannot admit that Trump was the best option for us. And now I think you see my videos. I'm not like one of those oh, diehard Trump and I love this guy.
Yeah.
He's a politician.
Hmm.
He is another one, right? So I
Yes.
don't put my hands. I don't know if you say this in English. I wouldn't put my hand on fire for him. How would you say that in English? I'm thinking like I wouldn't
Uh,
risk.
yeah. I think I get what you're trying to say. You wouldn't stick your neck out for him. Maybe that's
Yes,
another way
something
to
like
say
that.
that.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Portuguese we say I wouldn't put my hand on fire for him, but
That
that
makes sense.
sounded really weird.
No, I
Um,
think that tracks.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, again, I think he was the best option. I think he has, good intentions when it comes to like fixing America and really loving the country that he's part of. But again, it's not like, oh yeah, everything he does is right. And I feel like on the other side, it's I'm going to defend whatever it is, even if it's like the
Yes.
most absurd thing in the world. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to say that Biden is healthy and fit and that he is super capable of running the country, even though I know that he is not, but I'm going to say that he is because the moment I admit he is not, I am siding with Republicans and that cannot happen. And it's
Exactly. You
like
nailed it right
this,
there. You
yeah.
did. I think like you were talking about the teacher friend that you have who you said when you would listen to him talk, you might think he was a Republican. It's what it is both sides have a lot of people who are ideologically captured. And the second you start talking about politics, they immediately, like in their mind, they retreat to their red camp or their blue camp.
Right.
And most people, I think, agree probably on at least you could find 80% of things that they would agree on in generality, okay? And it's this 20% that we, all maybe have like more of a disagreement on. But when you start talking about politics with people and you start talking about Trump, to your point, or policies that he's enacted, that policy no longer represent whatever it's trying to be.
No, yeah.
It represents now Donald
A
Trump
person,
or a
yes.
person, or it represents Joe Biden or any other politician. It becomes about now the ideology of that camp. And so people sort of fall back to this tribalism and that
Hmm.
competitiveness that we were talking about before, right? And they fall back to it, and now that is what you're arguing with. You're not even arguing with a person anymore. You're now arguing with an idea that they've adopted as a lens to view their life and to
Yeah.
view the country. And that's dangerous, and that's one of the reasons why we can't even have conversations anymore without people getting so vehemently angry that they want to cut off a relationship with you. Like, I mean, you've probably seen all these videos of people in their cars or whatever being like, if you've got a family member who voted for Trump, it's okay to cut them off. And it's
Hmm.
just like that's so nuts, because not even 15 years ago were people behaving that way. And like I am old enough to remember that even when Barack Obama got elected, that was very polarizing too. It wasn't as polarizing as when Donald Trump got elected, but it was. But I
Hmm.
don't remember seeing anybody online or talking to people at work or in the military, right, who were like, "Oh, I don't talk to my dad because he voted for Obama," or "I don't vote for my," or I don't talk to my mom because she voted for McCain." Like
Right.
this is a wholly new, when I say new, like maybe the last like 8 years concept of this like super just gross and dangerous tribalism that exists with people now. And I do, for me personally, I blame the media. Like, I don't know, what do you think? You think, where would you place that blame, I guess?
Yeah, of course, the media and also our access to information. I always say that I think we're
Yeah,
not mentally prepared to know everything all the time, whenever you want, like waking up and looking at your phone and knowing what's happening in freaking Russia right now and so I think access to too much information does that to people. It radicalizes
yeah,
people. So maybe you had that small idea in your head, like, oh, I don't like Donald Trump. But now you've watched 10 videos of people just saying a bunch of things that they also don't like about him and
correct.
telling you that, now you have to stop talking to your parents because and this whole thing with parents nowadays is what drives me crazy. The amount of people just trying to blame their parents for everything that
Oh,
they
yeah.
are right now. And I think we all have trauma, growing up, you look
Yeah,
back and
absolutely.
you look at some things that your parents did. And I'm a mom, I have two kids, I'm pregnant with my third, and we try our best, but we fail, right?
Yeah,
There's absolutely things that my kids will probably look back and be like, why did you do that to me, mom? But
yeah,
we're learning as we go,
yep.
and we're trying our best. So now there's this thing where people are just blaming oh, because my parents worked too much, or because my mom wouldn't listen to me, or, I mean, we've
You know what
all
that
been
is?
there.
Yeah. No, you're right.
And then
You know what
they go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I was just gonna say that I think that people have it so good that they have to make things up to complain
Right.
about.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So they have it so good that they now need to find problems that don't exist, right? And they need to go, oh, why am I feeling depressed right now? You're feeling depressed right now because you grew up with everything that you could possibly imagine.
Hmm.
You never had to deal with any stressful situations. You had all the toys you wanted in the world. Everybody always told you you're the best. And now you're dealing with real life where maybe want a girl and she doesn't want you, and that's okay, right? And a lot of times people ask me like, why do you think there's so many like school shooters and so many depressed people in the United
Hmm.
States, and it only happens here? And I say, because we're the most privileged country in the world,
Yeah,
and we raise our kids this way.
yeah,
And it's becoming worse. As a mom, I see that. Moms want to protect their kids. They want to put their kids in a little bubble, like, oh, don't yell at them because, oh my gosh, you're gonna hurt their feelings. Oh, don't say no. Oh, don't do this, don't do that. And then kids rule the house. They grow up thinking that they're the best. So the moment they have to face the harsh reality, which is maybe going to school and someone making fun of you, which is part of life, right?
right.
We
Yes,
all
it
go
is.
through that, and you know, you just deal with it because you've dealt with other things at home. Maybe your cousins made fun of you, maybe you made
Yeah,
fun of them, like that. That's just how things are. But no,
correct.
now there's this, oh my gosh, no. Did he say he doesn't like my hair, or did he say I have a big nose, or did he call me fat?
Hmm.
I'm just going to kill myself because
Right.
that can't be.
Correct.
And it sounds like an exaggeration, but it's the truth. It's the
Yeah.
truth. You talk to this young people and they're so mentally weak, so weak. You see people, killing themselves because they fell in love with an AI robot. It's happening right now.
Yes, it
And I,
is.
I think it's awful. I feel bad for the kid, but I cannot, just sit back and say, oh, poor kid. That's a huge problem that we need to face. And we need to say those kids are mentally weak.
Yeah.
They are weak as hell. And what are we doing to fix it?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head in a couple different ways. Americans have now lived through several generations of Americans who have never had to wonder where their next meal is coming from. And I'm not
Right.
saying that because that there are obviously homeless people in this country who do have to wonder, but the majority of us have never had to wonder, and that's happened for generations. And we are thinking that by eradicating all obstacles and making things easier that we're making them better. And human beings have gotten to the point where we've gotten to because we have gone through struggle. That's what
Yeah.
figures out how we figure out how to make things better, right? How to do things in a more efficient way, how to defend ourselves, how to build society. All of this comes from our inherent ability to identify problems and fix them, right? But we have to understand that there's a difference between saying, okay, well, let's just use your example of children, all right? Well, we cannot make every environment just pillows and padded walls and all this nice stuff. You can't do that at all, because now you are all of this that we live in is a total facade of what life actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Your house, your car, cities, all of this. This is a fabrication that human beings, because of the intelligence, competitiveness, and innovation that we are good at, have created. But all of the natural law of this world still exists. The animal kingdom still has to compete with one another. The animal kingdom has offspring that are not fit for their group. This happens and is exhibited in a lot of different ways, whether it be that the mother casts them out or that the others in the group will do whatever it is, and that that offspring will fall to the side. They'll stop getting food. All these different things. So this animals go through some of these same processes that you're talking about. You can't escape natural law just because you live in a city or a town and have all
Mm-hmm.
these other things, right? But what you said about school shooters or just shootings in general, right? Like mass shootings, and how people, the reason why it happens so much in the United States is because our living conditions are so perfect. Are you familiar with the whole John Calhoun Mouse Utopia Universe 25 experiment?
No,
So
never heard of it.
so what it was is he was a scientist in the 60s and 70s, and he created this habitat for all these mice, and they had every resource they wanted was completely and totally provided for them. So there was unlimited food and water. There were no predators. The temperature was kept exactly the way it should be. The mice were even afforded like medical care if they needed it. Like if one of them got into a squabble, they would get healed and all this stuff. Well, eventually, the mice became apathetic to their environment. They stopped breeding, right? They split off into groups. The like alpha males of the group became overly aggressive, and then started becoming more focused on like grooming. And the same happened with the female mice. Some of the more, like, I guess you could say, like beta mice still became way more aggressive with the other mice against the women, against any of the offspring that happened before they stopped breeding completely. And eventually, even though they had the perfect conditions, all the food and water they could want, the mouse colony just died. And it was
That's
because
interesting.
it is interesting, and it's because they had everything that they were provided, or they had everything they could need provided to them, and so their decline, it mirrors almost like kind of what's happening like here, I think, right? Like, so birth rates are falling. People don't want to do that, and I think people blame like the job market a lot for that, but I think that there's more to it as far as like social and psychological stuff going on because of like some of these things that we're talking about here. All of the social roles dissolved. We see that now with this whole like gender thing that we're seeing going on. Gender is a construct. To me, though, it's gender is just a social construct, and it's like, yes, exactly, like that's what happened with this like mouse colony too. All their social roles dissolved. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just it's just so interesting because I think what you just said about like mass shootings and people needing something to do and becoming more aggressive, like that experiment, while it is mice, I think it's pretty succinct for the conversation, I guess.
That's the only explanation that I can come up with because a lot of people try and blame guns. I know for a fact it's not the truth, especially coming from a country where we have like the highest homicide rates and guns are extremely prohibited in Brazil.
Hmm.
So I know that that's not the answer. Like, it's not because we have access to guns here that these are happening. Because again, if you want to kill people, you can just run them over with the car, you can stab them, you can, and
Yeah.
you see it happening in
Look at
other
Europe.
countries. So it's, yeah, but I admit it, it's a lot more here, and I truly believe that it's because of the way we're raised. And you look at the shooters, and they're usually like the high class, young people who were raised with everything that they could possibly want. And I see so many of these weirdos, especially, I'm an educator, so I'm in a school environment all day long,
Right.
and I can tell, right? I can tell this the parenting style and all of these things. So usually when I see a behavior, I already know, like, well, if I call this parent, this is the response I'm gonna get. And I'm usually like 90% of the time I'm right. I'm right. And the kids that are mostly like efficient, that like to help, that like to go through challenges, they have the more strict parents. And I'm not talking strict like, oh, you're just mean to your kids. That people, they confuse, you just being a parent with being like mean to your kids. That's not what it is at all. But you have
No.
high standards for them. You know,
Yeah.
you expect them to do, for example, like I teach fifth grade. So these are 10, 11-year-old kids. Some of them don't know how to use tape. And
Okay.
I just go like,
Yeah, that's
tape
crazy.
this page to like, did you not go to kindergarten or whatever? Oh no, this is too hard. And then you talk to their parents, and their parents are always babying them, like, oh, I do everything for them. Or you can
Setting
just
them up
tell
for
that
failure.
that's how they're raising their kids, and they think they're doing amazing.
Yeah.
I have kids in fifth grade who don't know how to tie their shoes.
That's wild.
It is. It is. And I remember a couple of years ago, I spoke to a parent, and we brought it up because that was one of the things that bothered me as a teacher, like just seeing that kid with that untied shoe every single day. And I was not going to tie it for him, right? It's freaking fifth grade. So one day, we were talking about other things. The meeting was not only about the tying of the shoe, but I brought it up. And I remember what that mother said. She's like, well, he is going to eventually learn how to do it, because and she sounded like she knew what she was talking about. And I don't want to pressure him into doing something that he doesn't feel comfortable with right now. Some kids will learn how to read and write at 5. Some will wait until they're 7. Some will be in diapers when they're 6, but they will eventually learn how to do things by themselves. And I was just listening to that, and I'm like, yeah, that's freaking stupid.
You
And
know,
again, they think they are so knowledgeable about these things. It's bad. It's
yeah,
bad.
to go back to your point about like complaining about parents, so they just like these parents that are like that. Because I have kids too. I have 3 kids, and I have some friends who I live in California, right? So I have some friends who are a lot like the people you're talking about, coworkers,
Hmm.
even family members who are like this. And I think they think that they're doing like correcting mistakes that their parents made,
Right.
right?
Right.
And there's nothing wrong. Like there are a lot of people who grew up in really shitty environments, right? Maybe they were abused. And I'm not talking about people like that. Like that is a cycle you want to break, right? You
Hmm.
want to break physical abuse. You want to break, all these things like that. That's reality. But to equate, tape, right, or tying shoes, or all these other things that you're seeing, to somehow it's going to wind up as trauma later in life that these kids are going to have to unpack is insane. The life is not that way at all. Nobody wants to do anything for anybody else. Nobody's going to be constantly nice to you at all times. Just when you create this fake environment for your kids like that, you're just ruining them for the rest of their lives, really.
Yeah.
And you're turning them into people who need these safe spaces, people who want policies where the government acts in loco parentis in every way of their life. And that's what they want, because that's what they've gotten their whole lives. They've gotten a handout their whole lives. They've had people who do everything for them, and that's what they want in a government. And they don't understand, like, to use this analogy, the lion in the zoo is fed every day and is given water and is taken care of and does not have to compete and does not have to worry about predators or food. But he is not free. He is captive, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to be truly free would be him hunting for his own food and competing with other males for mating, and having to survive what it is, the life on the savannah, right? That's real freedom. Real freedom is challenge. Real freedom is responsibility. And, to kind of wrap this
And
idea
and
up.
real freedom is not
Mhm.
equal. And I think that's
Correct. I
where
love that.
yeah, it's not.
It's
So
not.
I think when sometimes you talk to people on the left, they have this idea, no, I like freedom. I like being free, but I want equality. But what you don't understand, you're missing the point
Yeah.
entirely. Freedom will not come with equality
No.
because people make different choices and different choices have different outcomes,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Equality of outcome is not freedom, because what you're talking
Yeah.
about now is a curated experience, and that's not freedom. It's okay that some people, even if you go to college, like, let's just use that as an example. People still carry this belief that a lot of people who attended college in like the 80s and 90s had, that if you get a degree, that you're going to get a good job and you're going to be set for the rest of your life.
Hmm.
And there's a bunch of reasons why that's not true anymore. The abundance of degrees, has made it, just simple supply and demand has made a bachelor's degree almost useless, right? And
Hmm.
or it's over, the market is flooded. But these people seem to think that having this experience means that they're deserving of something and that they're owed something, right? And that.
They're entitled, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And I just wanted to say too about that, the mouse utopia experiment. Even after the mice started killing one another off, like I said, there was infanticide. They weren't mating anymore, and the population decreased. And the resources stayed the same, right? So the population boomed and then decreased because of all the violence. The resources stayed the same in a more manageable level. Even though that happened, the mouse colony never recovered at all. It eventually just died. So that these behaviors you're talking about, they become like about society. They become the societal norms. It's almost like this is just like the natural event or natural occurrence that happens in life. When things get too nice, eventually it's not natural, and then the natural way will take over and kill you off. Essentially, that's what it is. And he calls it behavioral sink, is what he calls it. I'll just read. It says behavioral sink describes the collapse of normal behavior in overcrowded or overstimulated conditions. So that's basically the United States, in a
Yeah, and
large
this
part of the
is
world.
why I actually decided to speak up because I think these ideas have been going around for probably about 20 to 30 years here in America from what I hear.
Hmm.
I wasn't here, of course, and it was much less because we had much less access to, information and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say it's gotten heavy in the last 6, 7 years
Yeah,
with
definitely.
social media and all of that, and it got to a point where it started being part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to just talk because sometimes people ask me like, what made you start recording videos and just speaking up? Because I was never into that kind of stuff. Like I wasn't trying to become popular on the internet, nothing like that. But I was like, I feel like I have valuable information to share. And the same way that you see all these influencers on the left, I think there should be, the same type of people on the right
Yeah.
also speaking their minds. And if I don't do it, who will, right? Because
Yeah.
we always kind of expect others to do something. But I think, like you said at the beginning, it's up to us to be, a good citizen and to do what we think
Exactly.
is right and to spread awareness. And as an immigrant, I thought it would be really interesting for even some Americans to realize how privileged they are and how things are in other countries and how it because I feel like with what's happening right now when it comes to immigration, there's just a lot of Americans that are just starting to hate, all immigrants and think that we don't need immigrants at all. So I think
Agreed.
bringing that kind of awareness is also very important, and that's something that I wanted to talk about, like legal and illegal immigration.
Hmm.
And there are different types of immigrants. There are the immigrants who come here to take advantage of America
Yeah.
and to get handouts, like because they think they're entitled to it. And
Hmm.
coming from a third world country, I'll tell you this, a lot of people in our governments, they blame America for their failures. So,
Hmm.
it's not that we're corrupt. It's just that America put an embargo here and now we can't have access to blah, blah. It's all a bunch of lies. And
Hmm.
then people start believing it and they start hating America. I see that in Brazil a lot. There's just a lot of people,
Really?
like, they're literally eating shit and blaming America for that. And I'm like, when was the last time America was even involved with Brazil at all? Like,
Right.
there's nothing to blame them for. This
Hmm.
is all the freaking government that you voted for.
Yeah.
And they're trying to convince you it's something else, someone else, because this is what communists do. They blame everything and everyone but themselves. And it's been this way. It's one of their tactics. And if people don't realize that, they need to study a little bit more of history because the patterns are always the same.
Yes.
But anyways, what I was saying is there's a lot of immigrants that come here that have this entitlement, and even Brazilian ones. And if there's one type of people that I hate, is those Brazilians who come here. They vote for the Communist Party in Brazil, but then they
Hmm.
move here to take advantage of the most capitalistic country in the world. And they complain about it and they talk shit about it. And I'm
Right.
like, if you
You didn't have to
love,
come.
you didn't have to come. You're just being a hypocrite,
Hmm.
right? Go back to Brazil. You voted for that, so just be there with them, right? Anyway, so um, I think most legal immigrants are for Trump. And you
Hmm.
can even see in the numbers, he won the Latino vote. And
Yep.
people are like, how come? Oh my gosh, like how can you be a Latino and vote for Trump?
It's
Well,
easy.
because we actually ran away from the things that Democrats were doing to this country that
Hmm.
already happened in our country,
Yep.
right? We are seeing the same exact thing. You talk to Cubans, for example. I think like 90% of Cubans will vote for Trump
Yeah.
because they know exactly and even more than Brazilian people, 100%, they know what these policies will lead them into. And it's
Hmm.
not good. And it's not good at all. So yes, they're going to vote for Trump. And I think violence is another reason why we don't want to be in our home countries, right? We want
Sure.
to feel safe. I always My husband is me and my husband, we're both from São Paulo, very big city. But he's even like from a city where crime is just it's crazy. Like you can't park your car at night and just leave and enter the house. Like somebody's going to kidnap you. It's insane.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's really really bad. You have like just so you have an idea, when I bought my first car in Brazil, I would have to drive around the block for like 3 or 4 times, making sure there was nobody, so then I could open my garage and put my car in. Like
Wow.
that's the norm for people. And here we're like, oh yeah, whatever. Just I leave my car keys in my car, and
Yeah.
we walk around. We are not afraid, and all of these things that Americans take for granted. We coming from different countries where this is not the norm, we appreciate it, and
Right.
that's why and again, legal immigrants, they had to work hard to be here. I've had multiple types of visas. I waited almost
You should
six
explain
years
that
to,
process.
yeah, well, it's a long one, a very
Hmm.
long one. And again, people sometimes they think, oh, being an immigrant, being a legal immigrant is like the hardest thing in the world. And I'll agree with them. It is very hard, but there is a way. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not
Hmm.
supposed to be something that, oh, yeah, let me go on this app and fill out this information and boom.
Yeah.
Like, no, you
Two
have to
clicks later.
actually prove that you're a good citizen, that you're gonna, bring value to this country,
Love it.
right? Of course, like why would they want to just take shitty people from other countries and bring them here? Like that doesn't make any fucking sense.
No
No
country would want
country
that.
would want that. Right?
Yes.
But there's this expectation that America should
Supposed to.
accept it.
Yep.
Right.
You're
And
right.
it's something that I don't think I'll ever understand, especially coming from the left, because they say, oh, this country is so horrible, blah, blah. Oh, but poor immigrants, they come here for a better life. So which one is it? Is this
Mm-hmm.
like the shittiest country in the
Yeah,
world, or is
exactly.
it the country that people want to come for a better life? Like
Exactly.
you can't just think both ways. But anyways, I think people who come here the legal way and go through the process like I did. So first I was an au pair. I had a J1 visa. Then it expired. I had to go back to Brazil, and I did. Some people don't. Some people will be like, "Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna stay, and nobody's gonna know, and I'm just gonna live
Yeah.
my life here." And that would have probably been the easier way for me to just be here. But I knew better. I knew that if I moved here, I would want to have my documents. I would want to actually build a life here. And I was
Yeah.
young. I was 18 at the time. And
Wow.
I knew it. I knew it. I wanted to live here, but that was not the way. So I moved back to Brazil, worked really hard, finished my degree, taught English there for like 3 years.
Wow.
And then I started looking for other opportunities, like how can I go back? Like what kind of visa should I apply for? And again, being in a struggle because you don't make a lot of money in Brazil, things are expensive, but I never gave up that dream. And I knew that I wanted to come, and I just started looking for options. So then I started my master's degree in Brazil, and I've always been in the area of like teaching English as a second language.
Very cool.
So I found a school in South Dakota that was allowing, people from other countries to come and do part of their master's degree there. And
Mm.
that's where I went to. That I went to South Dakota, Sioux Falls, terrible place. um,
That's awesome.
yeah, I'm like, where is this? I didn't
Yeah.
even
I've
know
only
how to
ever
find
driven
it in
through
the map.
South Dakota. It's like flat as a pancake. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was there for like almost 3 years. And
Mm.
then a bunch of things happened. I had to change my visa, and eventually this is something that I don't usually talk much about because I feel like it gives me a kind of a victim look, which I don't like. But I was married
Mm.
to an American that was very abusive to me, like very, very abusive. He went
Oh,
to
I'm sorry.
jail and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and I was very young. I was 24. He was 21. It was crazy, but we met in South Dakota. So there was this whole process of me transferring my visa, from that was not a J1, that was an F1, like a student visa, then to a fiance visa, and then everything happened, and then I was like, okay, now I don't know. I'm in the middle of process for both. So I had to hire a lawyer, move back to Brazil. Then the lawyer
Wow.
said, go back. You have to reapply now because you already have a life in America. So you're going to apply as a divorced person, just saying that your life is here now. And if you go back to Brazil, you would lose everything that you
Yeah.
have built here. So it was a lot of money with lawyers and fees. And I remember working 3 jobs at the time,
Oh
but
my
it worked
gosh.
out.
Good for
It,
you.
it was, yeah, it was a long, long process, but it was worth it. And again, I could have just said, oh, you know what? Fuck it. I am just going to stay because I could have,
Yeah.
right?
And a
But
lot of
no,
people do.
you do things the right way. And in the end, it's worth it. Like now I
Yeah.
have my citizenship. Me and my husband, we're good. We can travel. Because for many years I had to stay here. I couldn't even go back to Brazil because I was in that
Wow.
process. So
Mm-hmm.
these are things that people they don't talk about, right? They think that, oh yeah, oh they call me privileged. They say, oh, you were privileged enough to have money, to have me. No, it's not privilege. It's hard work. I was
Mm-hmm.
by myself, you know. and if you cannot do that, then maybe this is not the country for you.
Yeah.
If there's something that, oh, but I have three kids and all that, well, maybe this is not the right thing to do right now. And the whole poverty thing, like, oh, poor people deserve a better life. And I agree, but that argument doesn't hold water because we have so many poor people in the world, and all of them would benefit from, coming to America. Does that mean that we just have to open our doors and say, yeah, all poor people in the world, come here?
Yeah.
Like, no.
No.
So I don't understand where this idea that we're obligated to help poor people come from. And this is one of the things that I love about Trump and Elon too. He talks a lot about that, which is the United States has been helping people for way too long without getting anything in return.
Yeah.
Actually, we're being called the bad guy for doing
Yeah.
so. So fuck that. We are just going to not help people and be fine with it. And I
Right.
agree. I agree. Why are we doing this much? Why are we paying that much money for NATO? Why are we being okay with being tariffed, uh, and other countries cannot take any, like, if we charge them, oh, we're just terrible. My goodness. Why? Why?
Yeah. I think America is held to a double standard that no other country is held to at all, and I think
No.
that
No.
a really good like current demonstration of that is the way that the media is presenting this whole like soft war, tariff war, or whatever you want to call it, between the United States and China. And really, the way they paint it is between like Trump and China, right? I see when I go online, right, and like especially at work, because all of the browser home pages are just MSNBC, which is wild. I can't change it. But all of these articles I see about Russia or China is praising something to do with like the space program or some sort of military tech, or how their economy is just rebounding and doing better, and the Chinese are doubling down on working hard, and but then everything you see about the United States is terrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's created this population of people, and again we're talking about like people that are online for the most part, and some people I know in person, who seem to have this idea that like you said, the United States is the bad guy and China is somehow the victim in all of this, right? And it's like there are so many people who can't take this device that we all have in our hand, with the world quite literally at your fingertips, and learn about the trade relationship between China and the United States, going all the way back like to Nixon going and visiting
Mm-hmm.
China, right? And then you look at Bill Clinton letting China into the World Trade Organization, offering up all these incentives, NAFTA, getting rid of American jobs, all of these things. And then the fact that China has basically violated everything they said that they agreed to do when they were led
Because
into the
that's what
World
they
Trade
do.
Organization. Exactly. But they are not held to that standard.
Mm-mm.
And it's so funny, when the tariffs came down, one of the organizations they appealed to was the World Trade Organization, an organization whose rules they haven't followed or respected at all. And China checks every single box that the woke group would love to cancel anybody over. They're racist. They have an actual slave class, and they're racist because they're one of the most homogenous populations in the world, right? Like I said, they have a slave class. Everything you do is under constant surveillance. You cannot go online and complain about the Chinese Communist Party or Xi Jinping. Any of these things, which people have forgotten that just 4 years ago, they were welding people into their homes because of COVID and not wanting them to leave their apartments or wherever. They were literally welding people into their houses. That's insane. So they check all these boxes that anybody on the left would want to cancel anybody else over, but they get a pass because somehow they're the victim of Donald Trump. It's insanity.
It is, and I feel the same way when it comes to Muslims, right?
Oh,
Like they check every single box of it. And here's one thing, and I highly recommend people to go ahead and study about it, but go look at what happened in Iran. Really? because, and this is actually one of my biggest fears. So communists, they partner up with Muslims because they have the same enemy, which is the West, okay? And the white man, even though they have total different policies and practices,
Right.
they just leave all of that behind. As you see now, like Queers for Palestine, which,
Chickens for KFC. That's what I say.
my gosh. Um, but they are able to, close their eyes
Hmm.
and pretend they are not seeing anything because they have something that they want to destroy in common. And once they do that, because that's exactly what they did in Iran, we need to just take this person down. He's a dictator, or he is an oligarch, whatever. And once they do that, of course, they start fighting between each other because they don't align. Muslims are more radical and stronger, of course, so they are going to take over. And
Right.
that's exactly what they did. And then next week, they're like, okay, now women are covering up. And people are like, what? Yes, you are. And then if you're not, you're going to be like decapitated, or you're going to be stoned to death. And it's a sudden change that people were not expecting. They were like, oh, but we were just protesting in college campuses, like thinking that we want something better for the.
Oh yeah.
No, no. And this is the same thing that they're doing here. So again, like you look at China and you look at Muslims and you look at, these leftists here, they all have something in common, which again is like the hate for the rich, the hate, but they don't realize that in the end, they're also going to have the rich in power. You know, they also look at the Democratic Party. They are all rich people. They are
Hmm.
the white rich people that they talk about all the time.
Correct.
And it's so, and again, that's when I start thinking that my husband may be right, because how can they not see it? How can they not see it and keep like these double standards? I don't know if it's some sort of mental
You
disease, or
you
i
know what I think
I
it
don't know.
is? Honestly, I think there are a group of liberals who can't see it, and I think it's because they a lot of liberals, I think, need to have a highly curated environment to feel safe. Okay. And I think that maintaining a worldview that they've had for their entire lives is safer than coming to the realization that that worldview is no longer accurate. And particularly a lot of these people who are academics, so these ivory tower types, they maintain this worldview that their degree is and their credential means that they have power. It means that they know better than everybody. And I think that they can't see some of the things that they say and do that's so blind to some of the beliefs that they hold, because they are unwilling to try and break out of this box they've created for themselves that makes them feel safe. And part of feeling safe is the sort of authority that they give themselves from being well credentialed or having a degree.
And
And I
being
think,
safe is just not being contradicted by anybody, so they don't
correct.
allow, different discourse.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, you said it very very well. You're familiar with Batya Unger Sargon?
No.
So
Uh-uh.
she's a news anchor. She works for Newsweek. She's the opinion editor there, and we've had her on the show a few different times. But she's the author of a couple different books, and one of them is called Second Class. And in that book, she basically interviews a bunch of people. A lot of them are immigrants who came to this country and they work really, really hard. And she talks to them about the struggles that they face, and just really paints this really deep picture of what a common person goes through in the United States every day, working class, blue collar types. and she paints that picture, and she uses the disparity between the like wages that people used to make when the United States was still manufacturing heavily. So in the 1970s, she talks a lot about how Americans purchased a lot of what they manufactured, and that's why
Hmm.
that system worked. And as jobs went overseas, the wages that the CEOs, these white collars, and these jobs, their wages went up, their salaries went up, while they were making cheaper goods, but the wages for the workers that were still here in the United States in whatever capacity did not go up, right? And that you can watch sort of that system coincide with the shift toward getting a degree rather than working in a factory. And that's sort of this, like 1977, I think, is sort of the benchmark year she puts on when a lot of what you're talking about and why a lot of liberals think the way they do really began in this country, and this focus less on being blue collar, it being okay, and manufacturing in the United States with credentialism and having degrees, and then those degrees and those credentials being reserved for people who have a lot of money, because those institutions are very expensive to be a part of,
Hmm.
and only a certain demographic in the country is able to have access to that life, right? And in the 90s and then moving forward, especially in the 2000s, online schools and all these other things came to be a thing where now everybody has a bachelor's degree for the most part, right? There's less people that have a master's degree and even less people have a doctorate, but a bachelor's degree has become the new associates, right? And so she does a really good job at essentially exhibiting why this group of people, the Democrats, who used to represent the blue collar worker in the United States, this populist movement of workers who are looking for representation and acknowledgement of their hard work, and to be taken care of for their labor, have now been abandoned by this group who now only recognizes credentialism and degrees as
Yeah.
being the ticket into that party. And that's why Trump appeals so well to people. And she's a very stark voice for that all the time. If I think you would actually really enjoy listening to her and probably reading her book. But she's saying what you're saying, essentially, that this they abandoned the working class group of Americans that don't seem to get why. And it's just hilarious because it's glaringly obvious why to almost everybody else. But there's a group of people, I think, who want to hold on to that and know and think that they can still keep doing what they were doing before and get a different outcome. And then this group of people, especially the academics like at Harvard, Columbia, Yale, all these places that Trump is going after right now, who just are incapable of seeing it because they've existed in this very curated environment for decades.
Yeah. And what I was going to say about that, and please send me her information. I would love to look into her book and the things that she does. That sounds really interesting. Um, but what I was going to say is that if you even look at the way Democrats talk about immigrants, you can see that they really take themselves away from, like, how can I say this? Like when they say, for example, like who's going to clean our toilets if immigrants
Yeah,
are deported, or
yeah.
like who's going to make your meals, who's
Who's
going
going to
to,
pick all the crops? We need people to pick the fruit. Yeah,
right? So, and it's the same discourse that they had, back in the day during slavery. If you had slavery,
great
who's
point.
going to pick the crops? And
Right.
really, that's what they said. I think sometimes people talk about the changes um, that have been going on in between parties. I don't feel very comfortable speaking about that, but from my perspective, Democrats have never changed.
Mm-hmm.
They've always been the racist ones. They've always been,
Right.
the classist ones. The always. What they did was they learned how to lie. They realized that just saying, oh no, yeah, we want
Oh
slavery to
yeah.
continue, that was not going to take him anywhere because they became a minority. So that they evolve. And it's the same thing with communism, because I think now, before, I would say, like, I would never think that communism was part of American politics because America is so anti-communist. Like it fought wars against it. So
Yeah,
I never thought like, oh yeah, Democrats are communists. Now I think of them as communists. And even the
I think that's
tactics and
accurate.
the strategies, again, because they want them to be the only ones holding power. And that's what communism is. The people at the top who fight for communism, they don't fight for communism because they want equality for people. They don't. They fight for communism because they want more power for themselves. And when I started learning about that, I had that question in my mind. I was like, why would someone fight for it? Like, that makes no sense. Someone like in the government, because it's going to be shitty, right? Who wants to live in a communist country? Nobody. But these people do, because when you have people equally poor and people without
Yeah,
freedoms, you become way more powerful, way
correct.
more, like you are the king. Like look at North Korea, for example.
Right.
Like we don't have that kind of power here in America because, again, people have choices. We still hold power in our hands. Like if we don't like something, we say something,
Right.
and we can still gather and protest and do all these things, which are not okay in all of these countries. So I look at Democrats this way. I think they've gotten better at lying, and once they see that they're falling, they're going to try something else. Like this whole minority thing, that's new. Like, because communists were never like that. Che Guevara killed thousands of gay men. They
Right.
despised, minorities.
Yeah.
But what people sometimes don't understand is that communists, they don't give up. So once they see like, oh, okay, we fucked up, like people are not believing us anymore, what can we do to
Well.
bring the movement back?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do. So they had the workers before, they would go like, and again, when you look back at like even Karl Marx and Lenin and all of these people who adopted communist ideas, they even changed their tactics.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, oh, and I agree with Carl in so many aspects, because there, it's true. Like workers were being screwed back in the day. Like you were working at a factory, you lost an arm, nobody's gonna care for you,
Mm-hmm.
nobody's gonna help you. Now you're just gonna starve. So laws needed to be implemented. Workers needed more rights,
Mm-hmm.
and I agree with that. But now there's this misconception that the right is completely against workers somehow. Like we don't. It's crazy. But anyways, just going back to Karl Marx and all of that. Like I agree with some of his points, but then they use the workers at first. So they go
Mm-hmm.
to the workers and they go like, you're being abused. They're taking advantage of you. Look, you are making this, I don't know, this phone, but you can't afford it. Like, that's not okay. And then they started the whole conversation. Like, you need to own the means of production, blah, blah, which is BS. And then they get a lot of states they convince them to become communist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know what happens. People starve, millions and millions of people die,
Right.
and then they say, well, but that was not real communism, let's try again. And then they try it again and the same
Rinse,
thing
repeat.
happens. Yes. And it's come to a point now where they don't have the workers anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you can clearly
Correct.
see here in America, they don't have the workers. If a communist go to a factory and start, with the whole conversation like, oh yeah, you have to hate your boss and you got to own the means of production, people are going to say, fuck off, get out of here. I know this conversation is not going to take me anywhere,
Right.
right? So they needed another group. And what is this other group that they can go for that are not workers? Minorities,
Yeah.
because they are also oppressed. And
Mm-hmm.
when I say this, like, because a lot of times, like people on the right, they become too radical and they can't see, like, oh no, there is no racism, there is no homophobia. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. And these people go through it, and it is impactful for them, like just living through these experiences, and then they see someone say, oh, I hear you, I'm here for you, I feel your pain, I'm
Yeah.
going to help you. Like, so they always focus on people who are somehow like more damaged and that are more easily to fall into their promises. And this is what communism has become. But the essential idea of communism hasn't changed. These
Yeah.
people are going to be the first ones to get killed if we ever become a communist country.
Yeah.
They are.
No, I think what you said is very correct. It's predatory in that the way that behavior happens, and I think too that that's one of the reasons why that side of the aisle has such a focus on like some of the like trauma you were talking about earlier, and convincing
Mm-hmm.
people that they're victims, right? Because when people think that they're victims, they look for solutions. It's very easy to get somebody in their feelings and make them think that they're being somehow mistreated or whatever. And then they're easier to manipulate because you can come to them, like you said, with that solution. And I think it has worked a lot, especially even the last 4 years, and then during probably the latter half of Donald Trump's first presidency. But there's so many examples now where even those groups are getting abandoned. Like look at BLM, right? BLM definitely is a Marxist organization, and
They are.
through their like attempts at having business dealings, a lot of the corruption that is in BLM has come out. So there's a lot of black people that I know and have seen online that just want to distance themselves from this organization. They don't want to
And they
distance them.
better do that soon because things are going to get ugly for them if
Correct.
they're not.
No, you're right. They don't want to distance themselves from like the point, I suppose, of like, advocating for civil rights. But a group like BLM does not represent those at all. It represents
Mm-hmm.
to basically do what every corrupt government ever has always done: is extract labor and wealth from the people that it seeks to control, and that's exactly what's happened. I actually was wondering if you're able to sort of break down like what happened to Brazil, why some of these policies you were talking about that people live under came to be. Like, are you able to like historically break that down a bit?
Yeah, well, so first we had a dictatorship in Brazil that was the military one. So this happened in the 60s, and the United States was involved in it. So there's a lot of blaming,
Mm-hmm.
let's blame the United States because we have this here. But again, the United States was involved in it
Mm-hmm.
because communists were trying to take over Brazil. And then I always say this, when you become a radical to one side, then the only way to eradicate that is being radical on the other side.
Right.
So that's why we had the military dictatorship where lots of innocent people were killed. You didn't have freedom of speech. It was, I don't remember exactly how long it lasted, but then there was a whole revolution that brought democracy back. And since then, these communist groups have been, growing in Brazil. Like, oh, look at what happened to us, and the police is bad, and and that's why I always say, like, the things I see here, I've already seen them in Brazil like 10 years ago. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same discourse. Oh, cops are bad. We need a revolution and tax the rich. Like, it's the same exact thing. So there's this guy in Brazil. He's an old man now, and he's our president now, after being in jail for the biggest corruption scandal ever. So he gets out of jail, and people vote him in again.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
How
But
trustworthy are those
anyways,
elections?
say that again.
I said, how trustworthy are those elections?
So this is another point, right? I honestly don't know. I
Hmm.
don't know. People say that, or because we have like machines where we can vote,
Yeah, yeah.
and they say like they're the safest and they're inspected and this and this and that. In all honesty, both sides in Brazil are very corrupt. I don't stand with Bolsonaro either.
Mm-hmm.
I think he brought some hope for us at the beginning, But he
Right.
just messed up. Like he was a big part of the big machine, like the big government too, and he just did things wrong because he wanted to be part of that. And I think Brazil is so inherent corrupt that it's hard to change. I feel like even if I became president there, I would have to just go with their rules, otherwise I'd be killed. Like there's
Yeah.
no solution there.
Mm-hmm.
There's not. Here I still have hope. And that's why I was like, I need to start speaking up because this is just the beginning. Like, if I was able to speak up when I started seeing the things that I started seeing in Brazil, but I was like, what, 12 years old at the time, so I couldn't,
Yeah.
maybe things would have changed. Like, if people had realized, because things happened like without us even realizing. So, first thing was they got rid of our guns. We had like a type of Second Amendment in Brazil where we could have, our guns and our freedoms and all of that.
Really?
And they just started this discourse. No, guns are so bad. Oh my gosh. Well, and then everybody is like, okay, here they are. So they turn them all in. When I think about that, it's like, it feels like it was just a dream. But I remember going to the supermarket and they would take like even toy guns away from kids. Even now in Brazil, they don't
Wow.
sell toy guns. They don't sell swords. They don't sell anything that resembles a gun, like as a toy. No.
Wow.
And if, yeah. So sometimes my family, and this is such a strong concept because the propaganda is so heavy. Like, I buy guns to my kids, like toy guns, like water guns and things like that. And then sometimes my family will see that and they're like, oh my gosh, they play with that. Oh, like they feel awkward because it is so prohibited in Brazil. They made it like something so horrible. But again,
Mm-hmm.
we are victims of this ideology because the bad guys still have guns.
Yeah.
They are the ones
Exactly.
pointing them to your face, and trying to steal your car from you or to kidnap you or do whatever. It's insane, but people still do, because the propaganda, and that's what communism does. It's the
Mm-hmm.
propaganda. It's so heavy. It's so heavy. People don't understand how powerful these things that we're holding in our hands are right now. And back in the day, even, during freaking Holocaust, that was all propaganda. All those Germans were not bad people. They
Mm.
were not. They just fell for a very heavy set of commercials and just propaganda that told them they had to do something,
Yeah.
right? That they were being attacked and they needed to act. It's so dangerous, so
Mm-hmm.
dangerous. Even now, like I say, in Brazil, there's people literally starving and they're still like defending the government. Oh no, it's not their fault. It's because 20 years ago an American came here. Like, no, no, it's
Right.
not that, but they still fall for it. Anyways, so this guy, he starts like his name is Lula. He starts this whole communist party, right? And he goes to the factories. He cuts his finger off so he can be retired. Yeah, so he only has 9 fingers. If you
That's
have
wild.
time, go look at his story. He
Okay.
says he lost it by accident, but we all know he did it on purpose.
Okay.
There's proof that where he says like, I did it. So, and that was like another weapon that he used. Like, oh, I lost my finger, and look at how
Right.
these, what did they call them again? Oh my gosh, there's a word and that every communist use to talk about their bosses.
Well, I'm not sure.
Whatever. But look at how bad they are. They're taking advantage of us. And even my father was, because my father worked for Volkswagen,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a factory worker, and he was kind of like close friends with this guy. Because this guy worked at a factory, and he started the movement inside the factories.
Yeah.
He was like a, and sometimes when I think about it, I go like, I feel better about the US because we don't have anyone like that. You see
Mm.
like AOC and Bernie
Oh
Sanders
gosh.
defending communism. And that makes me feel at ease because I'm like, yeah, these people are never going to get anything.
Let him
If
talk.
we had, right? But if we had someone here in America, like a people's person who were in fact like a poor guy inside a factory that was convincing people to gather, and I would be scared because
Mm.
that is a tactic that I know works. But we all we have is like these oligarchs, just nobody's going to buy into that. I mean, some people
Sure.
are, but never the majority. But in Brazil it happened. So
Yeah.
this guy, it just became huge. So he created the Workers' Party, and he tried being elected twice. He lost it, and then the third time he got in. When he got in, it was insane. It was insane, the amount of corruption. But he was lucky enough that Brazil was booming at the time. Like we were partnering up with China. We had just sold a lot of our goods to other countries. So Brazil was in a good condition, and he just kind of like managed things. So it was like his first term wasn't like so bad. If it wasn't for the corruption that was later found out, you would have said that, oh, he was a good president. And then his second term, and then he brought a woman to be elected again, and they kept on being elected and being elected. And when we noticed, like the country was billions and billions in debt, and we started seeing the results of their bad politics
Mm.
because again, for them it was all about welfare, same exact politics as Democrats. So think about Democrats, but think of them like in power for 16 years
Yeah.
instead of 4 or 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a big damage to the country, and I don't think Brazil can ever recover. So they
Hmm.
had Bolsonaro after the 16 years, and again, he didn't do what he was supposed to do. He just played the music and just followed along with it. Now they're persecuting him and playing this big thing like he's the worst guy in the world, and they even tried killing him. They
Really?
stabbed him. Yeah. So very similar things. We had our January 6th there too. We had it's so crazy. It feels like you're watching the same exact movie.
I was gonna
And
say.
yeah, it's just literally the same thing because we saw the results of these policies in our country. So there are so many people still thinking that Bolsonaro is the answer, and I get it because that would be the right in Brazil. But it's kind of like thinking that George Bush would solve anything just because he's a Republican. You know what I mean? Like we all
Yeah.
know that
Exactly.
he was not good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a complicated situation in Brazil now, really.
Mm. Your story about him cutting his finger off reminds me of a parable about an axe and the forest. Have you heard that parable before?
An axe in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds familiar. Tell me
Yeah.
about it. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, I looked it up because I didn't want to screw it up trying to describe it. So it's the forest was shrinking, but the trees kept voting for the axe was clever and convinced the trees that because his handle was made of wood, that he was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's exactly
Yeah,
this sort of
that's
like adaptation that you're talking about, to adopt these characteristics and personality traits to garner trust from people and reach out to people that are affected by bad policies or work or racially impoverished group or whatever, and you can rally all this support for them, but in reality you're just hoping to mass wealth and mass power. And yeah, no, I thought that
hmm
was really succinct. You mentioned China. I wanted to ask you what you knew about sort of the relationship that Brazil, because they're a BRICS member, right? That they have with China, and what you think about that.
My gosh. That
Yeah.
actually makes me want to cry because I feel like in less than
Oh
10
wow.
years, China's gonna own Brazil. They are. So
In
they're
what way?
now, they have their car factories in Brazil. This is a funny story. So if people who are listening to us, please go look it up because sometimes people talk about things and we don't just take it very seriously, and then we start looking at these things, and it may open your eyes to some of the things that are happening around the world. So here's one thing that
Exactly.
China's doing in Brazil now. They brought all of their factories, like car factories, to Brazil, and they are importing a lot of cars to Brazil, a lot of electric cars to Brazil, just killing our industry, really, with shitty cars. So, and then what happens after a few months, they have their factories there. You know what we find?
What?
Slaves.
Oh, slaves
Slaves. Chinese slaves that they
in
brought with
Brazil.
yes, to
Yo,
work in those factories. It,
how'd that happen? How did the Brazilian government find out about that?
well, the Brazilian government is actually trying to hide that and just saying, like, oh
Of
no, they
course.
were just workers, blah, blah. No, but these people were here against their will. These people were like, they didn't have any food to eat. They were being paid like $2 a day or something, right?
Wow, that's terrible.
So, and this is what people don't get about China. They complain and complain about slavery and oh my gosh, slavery is so bad. Yeah, super bad. I get it. But blacks were not the only people who were enslaved.
For
In
sure.
fact, we still have slaves all around the world, right? Including in China.
Yep.
And that's how they manage to be so rich because they have all these people that are willing to work so they don't starve for like $1 a day. Do you think that they get paid that and they can actually live a good life? No, they
No.
don't. And these people who travel to countries like China and Cuba and they come back saying, "Oh my gosh, life is so good there." Well,
Right.
I feel like throwing up. There's people literally defending
I'm with
North
you.
Korea now.
I've seen that.
It,
Those people are paid. They have to be paid.
yeah, they have to because it is just insanity. One of the things that I want to do in the near future is just go to Cuba and talk to like real Cuban people. When I first moved here, I taught citizenship classes. So people who were applying for their citizenship, they were practicing their
Nice.
English. They had to learn like a lot of historical facts about the
Yep.
United States. So I taught them how, to improve their pronunciation, to memorize those questions, all of these things. And I met a lot of Cubans, just a lot of them. Amazing people. And the stories they would tell me about, it's like it's heartbreaking that, uh, they would get like 1 liter of milk for the whole month, and they would have like
Holy cow.
a, a baby in the house, and they would have to mix milk with water just so that baby wouldn't starve. There's people in Cuba now that haven't eaten a single piece of meat for like 3 years. And there's a page on TikTok, I don't know what it's called, but the person does exactly that. They go to real Cubans people's house and they just show the reality. And one thing that you're going
Wow.
to notice is that people are so afraid, like the Cubans are so afraid of saying anything because they know they can't, right? Even if it's going to be played just here in America, they can get in big trouble. So you see, like, they're so afraid of speaking up. And this really, really breaks my heart. I think one of the worst countries at the moment that are still um, communist, and nobody wants to help them because it's just an island in the middle of nowhere. Who cares? But it's Cuba because again, they don't have any business there. If you see the cars that they drive, like these are
I've
60s,
seen it.
70s car.
Yeah.
Nothing happens in that place. So you just sit there and wait because what are you going to do? You either work with tourism or
Right.
you don't work.
Yeah.
It's so sad. And they have the markets for like tourists. They have the restaurants that are only for tourists, and they have everything. Try going on a cruise to Cuba. Oh, you're gonna have the best food ever. You're gonna have the best water, but
Of course.
Cubans don't have access to any of that. But again, the government says, oh, it's because the US won't send it to us because of the embargo. But if there was really an embargo problem, how do they have all these other things that they can sell to tourists?
Right.
That wouldn't make any sense, right? Why do their politicians drive brand new cars? How do these cars get there?
Yeah.
It's a very sad situation. So I would love to just go there because I've always wanted to travel to Cuba, and but I think doing something like that to bring awareness, because gosh, those people suffer so much and
Yeah.
nobody cares. Nobody cares.
There,
It's sad.
we had a guy on our podcast a long time ago. His name is Rick Prado. He was born in Cuba. He was born in Cuba in his early years was when Castro was taking over Cuba,
Oh.
and his family was very prominent at the time. They owned a business. And of course, one of the first things that Castro and his lackeys did was go after businesses,
Mm-hmm.
private businesses, and say, well, this is now for the people. It belongs to us now. And, his family fought. And, unfortunately, he lost family members because of it. And he actually was brought to the United States because of the Catholic Church. They had a program called the Peter Pan program where he was brought to the United States as a child. And he was raised in the United States. Well, he ended up eventually joining the U.S. Air Force as a pararescueman of special operations, and then got out of the Air Force and started working for the CIA. And so a lot of these groups that you were talking about in like South America that are communists, like the Sandinistas, who I'm sure you're pretty familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
his job as a CIA operative in South America was to go around and fight these guys and get rid of them. So he's very ardently against communism and very outspoken about it. But he actually made his way all the way to the director for counterterrorism during 9/11 and the
Oh.
CIA. So super awesome guy, originally from Cuba. We had him on. He talks a lot about the things that you're talking about, and he does a good job. He wrote a book called Black Ops, and it's basically about his upbringing, his hate for communism, and a lot of the things that he did during his career in the CIA. But somebody that you may be interested in looking up, and he's
Absolutely, yeah.
pretty awesome guy. I can point him your direction too. But I just wanted to bring him up because he talks about exactly the same things that you're talking about, and he's much older than you and I are, and he grew up in this and watched his parents struggle with this, watched family members struggle with this. It's nothing new. It's been going on there in this island for decades, and it's become generational in the way that we've talked about how there's generations of Americans who've never had to wonder where their next meal is coming from. Well, there's
Mm-hmm.
generations of people in Cuba who are constantly wondering where their meals are coming from and
Well,
the
yeah, they
struggles that they
have
have
to
to do.
wait in line for a piece of bread every single day if they want to eat. It's so sad. It really is so sad. And then again, Americans just take it for granted. Like we just go to a supermarket whenever we want, we buy whatever we want. Even like poor people, just they could go to a dollar store and buy a toy or
Yeah.
buy snacks and stuff like that. These things don't exist in these countries. Like if I wanted a toy when I was young, I would have to get a piece of wood and a leaf, something like that, and I would have to just create it. There was no
Make it.
such thing as a dollar store where you can go and just buy stuff. So what I was going to say is, isn't it funny that we have like people from Cuba and people from other countries just trying to bring awareness, to how bad
Right.
communism is,
Right.
and even people from Europe. And we try talking to these college students, and they just say like, "Oh no, you don't understand. Like we lived through it. We know what we're talking about, and you just read books and listen to your professor saying a bunch of nonsense,
Yeah.
and you want to say that my experience is not valid, but what you're hearing here from someone who, again, was raised without having to worry about anything is what's valid." I was looking at what's happening right now, between Trump and especially Harvard because he cut their funds.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a list of things that Harvard needs to do in order to receive the funding back, which I think is awesome. But I was reading through that list, and they point out that only 2% of Harvard students and professors are conservative.
Yep.
Um, I think 35% was liberal, and then 29% very liberal. 0.5% very conservative. So like the percentages were very telling, right? And then Trump says we need more diversity. And when we say diversity, we're not talking about, oh, gay people, brown people. We're talking about diversity of thought, which is
Exactly.
really what diversity should be all about, right?
Yes.
So and then I was having this conversation with this other creator, and he's like, well, I think what Trump is doing is bad because he's now forcing Harvard to hire conservative teachers. So he's basically doing the same thing that the left was doing. And I was like, not exactly, because, and it was not professors. I think he said, like, Trump is obligating Harvard to accept more conservative students,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be the same. And I said, no, not really, because the students don't go to Harvard as conservative or liberal. Most of these kids, they go there and they know nothing. They're like 18, 19 years old. They're probably not very political at all.
Yeah, they just mimic what their parents
Harvard,
believe.
exactly. Harvard turns them into these radical liberals. So the problem is with what they're being taught in the school, and now like the people that they're admitting. Of course, if you are trying to admit people because of the color of their skin and their gender and sexuality and blah blah, you're probably going to have a more liberal type of group being
No doubt.
accepted into Harvard. But I don't think that this is actually what's happening. I think these people are being indoctrinated. They really are. And what needs to change is just how they're being taught. And because these professors are the ones grooming them. They are. And and I went to college. I know what it's like. I almost fell for that propaganda. I really, because you start questioning yourself. You're like, this is my professor. I have big respect for this person. And if he's telling me that this is how things are, this is how things are, right? You go to college because you want to learn. I just finished my master's degree, and it was
Congrats.
hard because you're paying money, into this big thing. Again, I'm a mom, I work full time, so I was having to like stretch my hours and sometimes wouldn't even sleep to write my papers. But then the articles I have to read, the problem of whiteness in the classroom.
Oh my
I don't
gosh.
even want to read an article like that,
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
right? Like, I've been teaching English as a second language for years. I know my stuff. So when I read an article saying that just posting flags in my room and making my room welcoming to all colors and blah, blah, that's what's going to make him learn English, I'm like, bullshit. That's not what's going to make him learn English. I had many, many articles telling me that assimilation was not a good thing, that white
It's the
teachers
exact
trying to make
opposite.
it is the exact opposite. And again, it's my experience as a teacher. I have taught hundreds of people and kids how to speak English as a second language, and it's through assimilation. It's not by
Duh.
translating everything for them.
Yeah.
It's not by just making everything easy and, oh my gosh, here's a translated letter for you and your parents, blah, blah. Yes, you want to be inclusive, you want to be understanding, but they take it to a level that is just beyond ridiculous,
Yeah.
right? So they say, yeah, this article in particular, the problem of whiteness in the classroom, it talked about, how most teachers are white and they're Americans. So they make all these immigrants feel uneasy because they don't share the same experiences. And and I'm like, okay, who cares if your teacher is white or brown or from a different country? The
Sure.
thing is, are they trying to teach you? Are they trying to make you better? Right? Because if they're just here like, oh yeah, come here, give me a hug. Oh, look, I accept everyone and everybody, but they never sat with you and taught you something,
Mm-hmm.
then they're not being good teachers.
Yeah.
They're not being good teachers at all. One of the reasons why I started speaking up as well was because as an educator, I started seeing the most nonsensical things being applied in schools, right? Like I had a course 2 years ago that I had to take talking about gender diversity and how some
So
students
dumb.
prefer being called,
They
this
them.
name or that pronoun and blah blah. And I just sat with HR and I said, I hope to God that this doesn't happen to me, because one of the rules was if a student opens up with you and tell you that they're gay or that they want to be called something else, you don't get to tell their parents.
Mm.
If Yeah. So you need consent from a minor to talk to their parents. So if they don't allow you to tell their parents, you don't. And I told HR, I said, I hope to God it never happens, because if it does, I will be talking to parents. Parents need to know if little Johnny now wants to be called Sarah,
Right.
right? I'm not going to just start calling him Sarah and then 2 years later, a parent is like, what's going on? Because this has happened many times here now, where parents are not aware of the transitions that their kids are going through. And again, I think being an educator, I have a more inclusive view. Like, teenagers are stupid.
Yeah.
They are. They will
For
make
sure.
stupid choices. And sometimes, even myself, like when I was an emo girl, like I had pink hair and I
Hell yeah.
loved like wearing black makeup and all of that. That was a phase, like last, I don't know, 1 or 2 years. And maybe if you told me back then that I was gay and that I needed to change my name, I would have taken that and said, yeah, maybe I am little Johnny. Who knows?
Sure.
Because we make stupid decisions. So it's so important for these teenagers to be surrounded by mentally stable people who are going to look at them when they say, well, I think I'm in the wrong body. And you're going to tell them, no, you're not. No, you're
Yeah.
not. Do you want to talk about that? There's no such thing as
No,
being
hell
born
no.
in the wrong body,
Right.
right? And again, when we say these things, a lot of people think that we're being hateful and that we're going to look at the kid and just shame them. We're not.
No.
At least I wouldn't do that, right? I would
Absolutely.
try and see, like, where is this coming from? Why you're feeling this way? Let's talk. What can I help you with? And then just talk it through. I don't understand why there is this thing that we affirm something that is not normal, something that is a mental disease, because gender dysphoria is a disease.
Yeah.
It is a disease.
Yes.
It's like, I wouldn't look at someone with bulimia and say, oh, and like they think they're
Oh, it's
fat.
okay.
They now look skinny as hell. And I would look at them and say, yeah, you know what? You actually do look fat.
Right. Yeah. You don't
I,
need food.
I would, right? Maybe you should eat less calories, if that's how you feel.
Exactly.
So I wouldn't do that, right? To
Yeah.
a little girl who's going through, again, it's a body dysmorphia that they have, or someone who's on, like going to the gym and taking all these steroids and all of these stuff, and they're about to have a heart attack, and I'll go like, you know what? You look very weak. You should take more.
Right. Yeah,
What you're
exactly.
doing is not enough.
Yeah, that would be
I
insanity.
Right? But we do that to kids, and the fact that they're targeting kids is,
There's a very
to
specific
me,
reason
what,
they do, I think.
of course, because they're vulnerable, just
Hmm.
like the minority groups.
Right. Exactly.
And if they get them young, oh, it's so much easier, because now they already have this kind of thought, this leftist idea. And if you think about it, all these movements, BLM, and every single leftist movement is all about communism. I know I
Hmm.
say this a lot and people don't believe it, but communism is behind all of it. The gender thing, black thing, uh, um, tax the rich, all of these things, they're all to
Well,
hide communism.
it's so wild to me because, people can go online and listen to people like you who've lived through this, and there's many people online who've lived through this, and you're talking about your lived experience, and they'll still tell you you're full of shit and that's
Right?
not real and that's just propaganda. Like, for sure, you absolutely are a paid Russian bot. Like, that's what you are, right? And it's
Yeah.
just like, how can you sit there and tell me all these people who have lived experiences are lying, the history books, like you talked about, it's all lies. None of it's real. Like you said, that it's not real communism. It's never been tried before. It's just wild to me, like to just deny it in the face of somebody else's lived experience is so wild, because that same group of people would be like, oh well, my truth and this, how you can't tell me that my lived experience isn't valid.
Hmm.
And it's
But
it.
it only works for them. Their lived
Mhm.
experiences work very well when it's in their favor. But if it's somebody else's lived experience, oh, then no, that doesn't
Well,
happen.
exactly. And the other thing I think that's scary with the kid thing and the fact that they're a very vulnerable group as well is anytime any authoritarian regime or dictator takes over, one of the first things they do is attack the group identity of the people they're looking to exact power on, right? And
Hmm.
when you said before that they said assimilation is not a good idea, when you're talking about assimilation, what it really means is, having a group identity, figuring out what it is to mean to be American and to emulate those behaviors, adopt them as part of your culture, and that way we all as Americans have some sort of shared identity and can be an actual community, an actual nation of
Right.
people, right? But they don't want that because it's very easy to divide people when you're telling
Hmm.
others that are new to this country and children who are going to grow up hearing this, that it's totally okay, and in fact it's preferred that you don't assimilate into a group and you only look at yourself as an individual. Like that is the very fabric of what will dissolve and erode society immediately, because you can't have a society without a shared identity. You can't have society without shared struggle. So that's exactly what they're doing, is hoping that they can get these, and this is also typical of communist movements as well, going after the youth, right? They are the
Hmm.
most impressionable people. You tell them all this shit that isn't true. And another reason why communists hate religion as well, right? Whatever anybody thinks about religion, but you can't have
Because they
another god.
assimilate. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And so it's like a playbook, and you're
Hmm.
giving
It
all of the
is.
plays in this playbook, and it blows my mind that people will sit there and tell you who's lived there that you are full of shit. It makes no sense. It's
Yeah,
disrespectful
no, it's
too.
true. And they start small. Like they don't start in a very radical way. It's like a little something here and then a little something there, and then when you notice, the whole societal behavior has changed.
Hmm.
It's just like what I told you about Brazil, when it comes to guns. Even though people should know by now that what they did to us is not right. They literally
Correct.
took our freedoms away. Now we have to, again, drive 4 times around the block, make sure that there's nobody there because we're afraid of parking our car in our garage. They still defend the idea that we shouldn't have guns because they started with a little something, they made it to, and the way they villainize people too, and they did that here with Trump and Trump supporters. um, I can see a lot of similarities there. It's not just like, oh, you have a different political view. It's you are a piece of shit. You are the worst type of people in the world. If you support this, you want to see me dead. If I had something really sad happen to me. Like,
Really?
I had a best friend that I grew up with, and oh my gosh, like we just did everything together. And he was a gay man. He is a gay man. But
Okay.
last year, so of course, with the whole politics, getting the way they were, like we grew apart a little bit. But I always supported him. Always. Like when he came out to his parents, I was the one like trying to talk to his parents every day and making sure that, that's not the end of the world. You know, because I believe people are gay, and there's nothing you can do, right? Just let them be happy. But being gay evolved to something else now. Anyways, so I was always by his side. I always supported his ideas. And last year he started reading the Bible, and I've read the Bible multiple times, not because I'm a religious freak, but I just find it interesting, and I love reading. That's a me thing. And I
Me
just
too.
love it. I'm actually reading it again now, and I'm, especially with everything that's happening now in Israel and stuff, like
Hmm.
it just gives me clarity on a bunch of things that I wouldn't know if I wasn't reading it. So he starts reading the Bible and he knows that I've read it multiple times. So he starts texting me and asking all these questions like, "Oh, I'm reading this now. What do you think?" And we start having these conversations, and I love it because he didn't believe in God before, and now like he seems to be, opening up more to the idea of, just Jesus Christ and all of that. And then I'm not the type of Christian that's going to preach the gospel and try to convince you that I am just not. It's just, and sometimes Christians will say, well, then you're not a real Christian. And I don't care. I may not be one because
Sure.
that's not me. I'm not going to be preaching about the Bible and telling you how to live your life. This is just, my personal
Right.
belief, and I don't expect anyone else to have that same type of belief. And my friend knew that. So he seemed comfortable talking to me about these things. And then one day he tells me, well, I'm reading this part of the Bible and it's just telling me that being gay is wrong and blah, blah. And I said, I want you to look at it from a different perspective. Imagine if in the Bible it said that being gay is like the most normal thing and that it is, again, normal and the expectation, we wouldn't even exist, right? Because when you think about being gay as the normal thing, you are being anti evolution because gay people, they don't
Mm.
reproduce,
Hmm.
right? And I said it in a nice way. I didn't mean to like
Right.
put him down
Yeah,
or
you were just
nothing
having a
like that.
conversation.
Yeah. And I said, of course, like being gay, I think is okay. And it's something that happens to some people, but it's not the normal thing to be, right? Because again, we are here, we are going to have kids, and then our kids are going to have kids, and we're going to just become the society that we are.
Right.
So I think that's why in the Bible it's never going to say that being gay is okay or the norm. And I felt like he didn't like that much, but okay, life went on, and then but he never talked to me again after that. Like he stopped sending the texts, and sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, what's up?" He would be like very cold. And then my birthday came, he never said happy birthday or anything. And my first daughter, I how can I say this? I asked him to be her godfather. So, my first daughter's birthday, he didn't show up. He didn't call or text or anything. So I just go like, okay, I have to ask, right? What's going on? And then I sent him a text and I just go like, hey, we haven't talked in like 5 months. You haven't said happy birthday. Like, I feel like there's something going on and you need to tell me because I feel like okay, yes, we think differently in so many aspects, but you're still my friend. I look at you as a brother. We grew up together. There's really nothing going on. It breaks my heart that we're not talking. Did I do something to you? And the text he sends back is like
Oh
the
man.
most devastating thing. Like he called me a homophobe. He called me a racist. He called me a xenophobic person. He said that I hated myself and that he always knew that I hated myself. And that's why I had become this political tool. He called me a political tool for the right, like that I was a shame, to defend Trump, and that I always made very homophobic comments towards him and stuff. And I was like, are you serious? Because I remember like just being by your side every time you went through some sort of homophobic experience and like really just standing by you and
Right.
supporting you. And he's like, no, I don't, maybe in the past you did that, but you are not the same person anymore. I don't feel like talking to you. Every time you talk to me, you make me feel bad about myself, and I just don't appreciate that. And he just basically said I was the worst type of person in the world, just like we talked about before. Like, yeah, you voted for this person, you are, excluded from my life.
Yeah.
And for a moment, like I cried a lot. I was very upset because again, this is like my brother,
Yeah.
I love him. He's my best friend. But so I was like, oh, maybe I should try to fix things and stuff. And I was like, no, it's not worth it. It is just not worth it. No matter what
Right.
I say, because I wasn't rude to him. I was just, trying to, but again, these people, they're so radicalized that they don't care about who you are. Like that's the kind he was one of those who would always turn to his parents like, oh, I'm this way because my parents did this. He had amazing parents, by the way. So he's always blaming someone or something
Right.
around him to make him feel better. And he wants those friends who will just say what he wants to hear all the time. And I'm not going to be that kind of friend for him. So I
Yeah,
was just like, you
absolutely.
know what? Okay, if that's what you think about me, then that's fine. Forget about my daughter. You don't need to be her godfather anymore. And if you don't feel comfortable talking to me, then don't. Because he actually left it in the air, kind of like, at the moment, I don't feel comfortable talking to you. And I'm like, it kind of like left me with the idea, like maybe one day I'll feel better about it. And I'm like, no,
Was he like
it's not
expecting you
happening.
to apologize and come back
Right, yeah.
groveling?
So
Yeah.
I just said, you know what? Yeah, if you don't feel comfortable talking to me now, you are never going to. So we're just better off this way and bye and thank you. But it's heartbreaking. It is very much heartbreaking
Sure.
because this goes back to what we were talking about, people who don't talk to their parents anymore, brothers and sisters, friends. How can you do that? You think about your mom and like, oh yeah, she's a Trump supporter. Who cares? She raised you.
Yeah.
She gave you the best life she could possibly give you, and now, yeah, she's a Trump supporter. I don't talk to her anymore. What kind of bullshit is that?
Yeah, it's this online community and this sort of online mind virus that's caused people to think that this is normal, that it's okay. They
Yeah.
see all these people talking about, like you said, like cutting family off, and it's okay. Normalize this, and they think that there's some sort of community in that online when it's not.
It's
Nothing.
not. And that's
Nothing.
why these people are so lonely.
Right.
That's why they're
Exactly.
so depressed.
Right.
The saddest people in the world are liberals. They are
I
because they're
agree.
always finding problems where there are no problems. They're always and you said something that's very true. They feel like they have this community around them, but in reality, this community is ready to attack them the first thing he says that they don't agree with. So let's say
Well,
tomorrow they start agreeing with furry people, and that's
exactly.
the new thing. And I say, well, I don't think people should feel like furries. Oh, you are a monster.
Yep.
You don't belong here anymore. So,
That's it. It's not a real community. It can't be a real
hmm
community because it has no actual semblance of assimilation or things that are unifying. It's whatever
right.
is popular at the time, and that can never be any sort of unifying banner because it will leave people behind, like you're talking about. And there's no set of core values that exist within that group to look back on and say, these are our sets of ideals. We'll talk about these things, and they revolve around these core ideals, and that's what unites us.
No, they
The
don't
only
even talk about it.
No, they don't. The only thing that unites them is whatever is popular at the time. And I think
hmm
most people that are in that group are pretending because they lack a real sense of community, and they seek that validation and they get it online, and they're not your real friends because they will tell you exactly what it is you want to hear, which is not what a real friend would do. And it's just like the worst thing you can do to tell somebody that needs to change that they're okay the way they are. And that's what those
hmm
people do all the time. I wanted to ask you, because we're coming up on the 2 hour mark here, if you'd ever had any pushback from other teachers where you are at in your school on like sort of what you believe and the way that you are trying to go about how you teach in your classroom.
Well, I never brought politics into my classroom. I
Mm,
think if we condemn that on the left, we shouldn't be doing it on the right. Um, there are certain things that are not political that somehow they've become political nowadays. For
Right.
example, talking about the Holocaust. And,
Sure.
now it's like, oh yeah, if you're talking about that and putting Jews as victims, then you are um, somehow like right wing, leaning, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but other than those things, I don't bring anything political in the classroom. So I don't think a lot of teachers know the way I think.
Got
There
you.
was one incident
That's good.
that somebody, I don't know if they were from school, but I had a very viral video about a year ago, like with more than 1 million views, where I was talking about racism in America. And I think I started the video saying something like, I'm going to say something that Black people don't want to hear it, don't want to hear, but it's the truth. I don't owe Black people anything, and nobody does. And then I start talking about reparations and all of these things. But I make sure that at the end I say, instead of focusing all of our power and all of our strength into things that divide us, why don't we all get together and start looking for things that we are connected to that can actually bring us closer, right? Because all of these, topics like, oh, white people bad, slavery this, and Black people deserve this, and blah, blah, this is only bringing division to us. And so the video was pretty much about that. And then somebody watched the video and sent it to my principal saying, like, oh, you have a very racist teacher in your staff. Um, and this person actually commented on my video, asking me, like, oh, do you work at this location or this location? So I knew something was coming up because the school I work for has two
Right.
locations. And I was like, oh, that. So I was kind of like expecting something. And then my principal called me and she asked to meet with me. She just brought it up, but I think she was pretty much on my side. She's like, I watched the entire video, but I think the way you started it was maybe not the best because a lot of people will just watch like 10 seconds. And in those 10
Right.
seconds, you're just saying that you don't owe Black people anything, that they shouldn't be crying about slavery. And some people will take that the wrong way.
Okay.
And I said, okay, I get it. And she's like, I'm not gonna be the one telling you that you shouldn't make any more videos, but as a former teacher, I would just say that I think TikTok has hurt more teachers than helped them. So
Oh
she
yeah.
she kind of like just guided me through it. I didn't listen to it much because I was like, hell no, I'm just gonna keep doing my videos. But after that, nothing really happened and there were no repercussions on the video itself. She just talked to me about it, said she had looked at my page and didn't find anything compromising, like it was just my opinion. She
Right.
respected that. But that was it. So, and I don't know how many people actually know that I have a page, that I do the things that I do. Like my
Probably for the
students
best.
never found out.
Sure.
So
Well, you said they were fifth grade.
yeah, I just keep these things very separate, very, very separate. Like my job at the school is one thing, and what I do online is completely different. Even like when I'm talking to people or making videos, I don't even bring up the fact that I am a teacher that much
That's
because
probably
I
good.
know this is going to, yeah, probably some
Someone's gonna be like,
people.
"What school is she at? What school?"
Right, right. So I'm just like, because when I first started, my name was actually an immigrant teacher. So I
Oh wow.
really, yeah, and I changed that after that thing happened. I was
Sure.
like, you know what?
Sure.
I'm not going to focus on that part too much because, yes, this may hurt my career and my job, and I'll
Right.
have to think about the things that I'm going to say in a lot of different ways. So that's when I was like, no, I'm just going to talk about politics in general because the reason why I actually started was because of that course that I had to take about gender diversity and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just going to talk about the things that I see here at school on a daily basis. And maybe that was not the best idea because again, it's my job and I shouldn't be sharing those things. So, but that's actually when my mind expanded a little bit more and I was like, as an immigrant, I have so much to to
Definitely.
talk about. It doesn't need to be like as a teacher.
Hmm.
And then just very quickly here, another reason why I decided speaking up is because I was pregnant. And I think that's when my mind actually changed because I used to be a lot more on the like moderate side of things. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't a liberal, I wasn't a conservative.
More
You
centrist.
know, I was, yeah. But I remember going to a yoga class and the teacher calling us like pregnant people and using terms like chest feeding and things like, and I was like,
No, it's
maybe
breastfeeding.
it's maybe it's just because this is my second language, so I'm not really understanding it. Because really, I had never heard of such thing before.
Right,
And
right.
then I started looking it up, and it's like, oh no, these terms are supposed to be inclusive. Well, I'm okay. No, this is getting ridiculous. And I had both of my daughters at home, natural births. I want to go the same way for this one. And when you do that, not trying to invalidate women who go to hospitals and, have induced labors. Some are necessary, but it's an experience like no other, and you start understanding what you are made for as a woman, right? And then you hear some man telling you that they are as much of a woman as you are after you just gave birth to a baby. You're like, hell no, get out of my face. Like, this is not happening. So I became really interested in this whole gender thing as well. And then I go back to school and they have me do that course. And that's when I was like, okay, this is it. I really need to start speaking up. But now I am kind of done with that because I'll be staying home next year.
Really?
Yeah, you
You
know,
done
I,
teaching?
for now, yes, because, I'm pregnant with my third. Paying for daycare for three kids wouldn't make any sense. It's more than $3,000
Yeah,
a month,
absolutely. Yeah.
right? So, and all my kids are little.
Just be
So
working to
I'm
pay
like,
for daycare.
right. So, and also like the first years are so important. I just want to have the time to bond with this baby. It's going to be our first boy. I'm obsessed with him already. So I just want to spend time with him, maybe a year or two. I left my doors open. I have a license. I can always go back to work whenever I want. But probably for the next 1 or 2 years, I'm gonna be home. So I want to focus more on this aspect of my life of like creating videos. I want to create a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Just focus more because honestly, I don't know how I grew so much. I have more than 100,000 followers on TikTok and literally created my Instagram not even a year ago. And I didn't put much effort into it. I was just posting the same videos because people say, yeah, you have to have other, platforms and stuff. And I was like, yeah, okay. Same thing happened with X. Like I just went viral on X like not even a month ago and gained like 5,000 followers, which was
It's
insane
awesome.
to me because I didn't have many followers there too. But everything that happened to me was very organic, very organic. I never had like a plan of like, oh, I'm gonna post every day or I'm going to, like people who want to grow online, they have these things. And again, I think it's awesome. I just don't have the time. Most of my videos are like at my lunch hour, just
Sure.
recording something that I saw online. So now that I'm gonna be home, I want to take this a little more seriously and do better videos and
That's awesome.
longer videos. But this is what I have in mind, like just staying with the kids and focusing more on that area.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, the last question I want to ask you is you said that you were teaching English and then also about immigration, and you had to
Hmm.
teach people looking to immigrate about like American history and politics and stuff like that. One of the things I say a lot is that I think high school students, American high school students, should have to pass the same test, the same naturalization test that immigrants have to pass to become citizens. I think American high school students should have to pass that test before they're able to graduate because I would
Yeah.
be willing to bet a paycheck that most American high school students could not pass that test at all, and that's pathetic. And I was just wondering if you thought that that is something that could help remedy a lot of the issues that we're talking about?
Yeah, I think just requiring them to take that test in high school is just going to be a band-aid. I think the change needs to
Sure.
happen inside the school system, like teaching people about real
Right.
American history and American pride. American
Right.
pride. Like in my school, I work at a charter school, and they're still very traditional in their values. So we have to do the pledge every day. We sing the national anthem. We have like Veterans Days assembly, and it's you can see that there's still that sort of pride in
Right.
being American, but unfortunately, it doesn't happen in all of the schools. There
Yeah.
are schools that make it optional for you to do the pledge. They never sing the national anthem. And when they're actually teaching history, they're teaching history through the lens of like America's so bad, right?
Yes.
So doing
No
that
wonder
and
they
then
act that
asking
way.
people to to just pass a civics test wouldn't be beneficial. So I think we must enforce American pride in schools. We must do that. And this is not by hiding the things that America has done that
Right.
failed, but we have so much more to be proud of than to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
And the things that we did that we should be ashamed of, we should try and find obviously like the reasons why these things happen. Like, for example, if you look at the 4 years that Joe Biden was president, we made terrible decisions as a country that will stay with us forever,
No doubt.
right?
The open
And
border.
then in 20 years, they're going to look back and say, oh, this happened because the United States did this, this, and that. And you're like, yeah, that is true. But it is also because of these politicians that were
Yes.
there that, made these decisions. So I think we need to be more open about politics in the classroom. But with the way that we are polarized right now, I find it very difficult
Mm-hmm.
because whatever you do is going to sound like you're trying to indoctrinate kids.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard. In all honesty, I think that's one of our struggles right now. How do we fix this? But I think it starts at home. My kids are very patriotic. Like they just
That's
love
awesome.
the 4th of July, and we read them stories about that. We talk about, the struggles coming from Brazil and what we have here, and we try and teach them the value of things and why we have so many good things in America and that other kids don't have it. So I feel like if parents can do that at home and then be on top of what their kids are learning in school, because I don't know if it's going to change or not. I know a lot of parents want to homeschool, and I kind of support that. At the same time, I think you are trying to put your kid into a bubble, and then later on in life, there will be consequences for that. So the ideal scenario would be, schools are teaching kids what's right. And when I say what's right, it's not about religion, it's not about what to believe in, it's not any of that, but it's teaching them how to think, not
Right.
what to think, right? But how to
How to
think,
think.
how to
Critically
read a
thinking.
text. Yes, and interpret that and be able to do more research and talk to people who have different opinions
Mm-hmm.
and not just this they demoralize people who think differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if someone,
Correct.
I think there should be more debates in schools, like
Right.
classes where they actually get, like, let's talk about abortion. One group is going to defend it, one group is going to be against it, and see what arguments they come with.
Yeah.
Like these lived experiences are so important. And I remember having to do that back in Brazil, and it was about abortion. And I was super in favor of it. And then during one of those debates, I changed my mind completely because the arguments were so valid. And I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. So I
That's the whole
completely
purpose.
of
Marketplace of
discussion.
ideas. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. And these kids are not exposed to that.
No.
So usually they will believe what their teacher says, what their parent says. So teachers, parents, and everyone around them should be teaching them how to think for themselves.
Right.
What do you think? I have
Yep.
so many kids who say, terrible things about Trump, and then you just hear it, right? They just hear their parents saying it, but they don't know why they don't like Trump. They
Right.
don't know why
They're
they're
parroting it.
calling Trump a dictator. They don't even know what a dictator is.
No.
Most of my kids don't know who Hitler was. It's
Sure.
crazy. Like they're not learning
The words mean nothing.
anything.
The words mean nothing.
Yes.
They just are parroting the emotion and parroting the words, and they have no idea what it means. You're exactly right. And I think it's so crazy because you say a lot of the same things that we say on this channel all the time. And three of the things that you just said, I'm gonna parrot to you. Because I think it'd be a good way for us to close out. You said teaching your kids, right? Teaching your kids about America. You teach your kids about Brazil. You show them how they're lucky to be in the United States and all these things. Something that we say all the time is that the revolution to save America begins at home. And part of that
Mm-hmm.
is having kids, and part of that is teaching your children about the United States and teaching them about the bad things that happen and teaching them about all the effort that people went through to make them better, right? You can't talk about
Mm-hmm.
chattel slavery without talking about the millions of men and women who died during the Civil War, right? Or how,
Exactly.
whatever that number is, whether it's millions or not. But you can't talk about those things. You have to instill those beliefs. You have to instill a love of country. And then what you said about bringing civics, economics, history, like for real, like back into the classroom, especially civics and economics, that would be the lead up to having to take that test at the end of high school and saying
Right.
that, because you've had an education in civics, you've had a real education in American history, you've had a real education in economics, you could be handed that test and take it and know that information like it's the back of your hand. And those three things paired together, I think, right? Like saying that this is a benchmark you have to be able to meet to graduate is by demonstrating that you have a functional knowledge of this country, and then going to school and learning about it and gaining that functional knowledge, and coming from a background of having a family unit that learns about and loves and understands this country and wants to make it better, and understanding that just talking shit about it isn't actually making anything better at all, because it isn't. If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
talk about how bad things are, you should be able to do that and then present a solution and go after that solution. There's nothing worse
Right.
than somebody who just brings problems and no solutions. That's not just something I'm saying about the United States. It's true in your workplace. I don't know how many times I've heard people that I worked under in the military say, if you come to me with a problem, that's fine, but come with a solution too, right? And that's exactly what you should do, and why we say here on our podcast that citizenship is not passive. It's all these things that you're talking about right now, that you have to participate in this bottom up experiment, the greatest experiment the world has ever seen in governance, and the attempt at taking everybody and making it a melting pot, that assimilation you're talking about, and moving forward together. That's exactly what is going to preserve these ideals in this country. It's not going to be a lot of this stupid rhetoric and wokeism that we're talking against here tonight. That's not what it's
Yeah.
going to be.
No, it's not. And I think it's an American concept and what has made America great always. Like, unfortunately, it's falling. Like it's harder to see nowadays, but I think it's still part of being an American.
Right.
Just recognizing that this country is great, that you should be proud of being American, and understanding that everything you do matters.
Right.
Everything you do matters, because I
I
think
love that.
the idea in Brazil now is that, oh, if I do something, it's never going to change. I'm just one person. Why am I even going to vote? Like, yeah, there's nothing I can do. There's this mentality. Like, I would say that part of being Brazilian is having that mentality.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's thinking that you don't make a difference.
Right.
And here I feel different about this. I feel like most people, they have this will of change, and they actually go out and they do things instead
Mm-hmm.
of just talking about them. There is a good part of our people, unfortunately, right now, that are just so blinded by this ideology, that are just like the ones you explained now. They just complain. They want to be victimized. They want to
Right.
complain about everything and never find a solution. But our mission is to actually make these people realize that for their own good, they need to change that mentality.
Correct.
They need to actively participate, actively bring solutions. And the moment we do that is the moment that we become united, is the moment that we
Exactly.
actually see change. And this is what happened last November. I felt a sense of union in this country that I had not felt in a while.
I
I
agree.
remember going to the gym the day of the election, and there was this truck, and it almost like it brings tears to my eyes because it was such a hopeful day for me. Like I was afraid that Trump was not going to win, and 4 more years of the nonsense that was happening was going to destroy this country, and I knew it, and
Right.
I knew it, and that broke my heart so much. But I was very hopeful, and I remember going to the gym and seeing this truck, and there was this hat saying the future looks bright. And oh my gosh, I just started crying because I was like, yes, it does. It
Hmm.
does. And we need this unionship to make it happen,
Right.
right? We need to be hopeful. We can't just say, "Oh yeah, whatever, this country is done." We can't like no, there's still time. There's still time for America to be saved, and we need to act. And it's not just, oh, now Trump's in power, then I don't have to do anything. No, you still need to be vigilant. You still need to do your part,
Hmm.
because this is, again, that's what being a citizen should be like.
Correct.
So yeah, I love
Exactly.
that.
Where can people find you?
Okay, so TikTok, I think that's my biggest platform, and I post there all the time. I try to post the same videos on Instagram too, but on TikTok, I'm at my handle, you call handle, right? So my
Yep.
handle on TikTok is Common Sense Does, and then all the other platforms, X, Instagram, it's Mackenzie CSD. So CSD is standing for Common Sense Does.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
please follow me there. I feel like I'm more close to my Instagram right now, where I can post stories and things like that. And I think that's where you guys found me, right?
It was.
Not
Yeah,
on TikTok.
absolutely. Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I don't. I our we used to have TikTok, and I just stopped posting on there because we were getting like the 200 views a death thing, and I just basically
oh,
figured it wasn't worth it. And I haven't been on. There's a page for us on TikTok, but I haven't used it in like a year and a half. So we are most
gotcha.
active on
On
Instagram and then on
Instagram.
X too.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Well,
Well,
thank you so
I
much for your
can,
time.
yes, you too. Thank you so much. And maybe I can tag you in some videos on TikTok, help your page just get a little more views. Because I know the beginning there is really hard, but once you start getting views, and
Yeah,
again, it's our voices matter, right?
yeah,
So I want to make sure that we are sharing as much as we can. I loved being here. Thank you so much for having me.
yeah. No, it was a pleasure talking to you. It's awesome to see that there's other people out there who, um, you know, I'm not alone in the way I think, and that you
Hmm.
and others out there like you, and we can be a representation of this sort of way of thinking, and for other people out there to find it and feel the same way. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, go check her
Um,
out, guys, on Instagram and TikTok, and on X. You said so. But until next time, I
mhm.
hope you guys have a good night, and you too, Mackenzie. Thank you so much for coming on with us.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, you all. Thank you.